Hello and welcome to the vlog. Before I set off on my return from Froghall, I thought it would be worth having a look at the tunnel my boat wouldn't fit through and seeing what was beyond. There it is. It gets lower as you go through, hence the gauge hanging down further than the entrance height. I've been assured by others that my boat would fit, but on these dimensions there's no way it would go through. No problem though, you can walk round instead, over the road and down this footpath. And that is the presumably little seen eastern side of the tunnel. I thought the canal pretty much finished here, but it turns out it winds off for another few hundred yards. You end up at this bend, where the canal turns into a single narrow lock. Go down that and you're in Froghall Basin, with moorings behind those trees on the left. It would appear not a lot of boats make it all this way down. Bizarrely, the facilities building with the water point, plus toilet and waste disposal, is on this side of the tunnel, which seems a little ridiculous if it's so awkward for boats to get here. Also here, and much more fun than a sanitary station, although what isn't, is Hetty's Tea Shop in a building that's 200 years old. Time to leave, and that means starting by reversing back up to the winding hole. My boat hates reversing in a straight line, so this was a contorted process, which I've hidden by speeding it up. The trick with a winding hole is to get a good line into it, getting your nose right into the furthest point, so I backed up well past to give a decent run in. Here we go. And did I do it? Did I do it? Yes! Sort of. A little bit of toing and froing as usual. No, I still don't need a bow thruster. Honestly, you really don't. This is not hard or even that awkward. And off I went, back up the Froghall arm the way I'd come. It was a lovely day actually, and going back I knew what I was in for in terms of twisty bits, so I relaxed into it a bit, and I've really enjoyed this. At Chernykh Bridge, however, things took a turn for the worse, when a wasp decided to target my packet of sweets, and in frantically waving him off, I took my eye off the ball, which is to say, my steering went to pot, and this happened. Listen closely, and you can just hear me saying naughty words, as I realised I couldn't straighten the boat out of the brambles, and it was dragging on the silt as well. Of course, this was perfectly timed for two pedestrians to be passing on the towpath, who saw and heard everything. So embarrassing. I should not be allowed on the canals sometimes. Shamefaced, I reversed off. Let us pretend that never happened. Coming back up to Flint Mill Lock, I admired these secluded cottages, one of which I'm sure I saw for sale recently. Through the lock, and hey, who's this proud fellow standing on his own personal log? Why, it's Mr. or Mrs. Heron. No points for guessing what it did next. Yep, fly off. There'd be some boaters who try to salvage that as firewood. Another cute cottage. If you like quiet and canals, this is the place. Approaching the Chernykh Valley railway station again, and a better view I think of this section where the canal runs alongside and almost under the station. That I didn't manage to film on the way down. It's the Black Lion Inn, which is about as far in the middle of nowhere as it's possible for a pub to be. It's a sharp bend to the left here, which you have to take in a wide arc to line up for the two bridges in quick succession. You're back on the river section here, where the canal is not a canal, but the river Chernykh. Unlike on the way down, I didn't have a load of rubbish around my propeller, so with it being a river, I took the executive decision that I could apply river speed limits and gave the engine a bit of a blast. I'm pleased to say, no matter how much speed I get up to, even the giddy heights of 5 miles an hour maybe, my boat is very good at not creating any sort of wash that would erode the banks. Very soon I was back at the lock onto the canal again. There's a hiding heron. I haven't had any horses on video for ages, so here's one. I was even joined by this little chap, taking a break from all that exhausting insecting he has to do. Back very carefully past that underwater obstruction, the one with the sign that doesn't tell you where it is. And finally I was back at the bottom of the 3 Chedleton locks. That place on the right is a Waffle House, where I later had a rather splendid strawberry and ice cream creation, and was bothered by yet more wasps. A nicer day to cruise past the flint mill than when I came down, and I was pleased to just be able to grab a shot of one of the old mills. It was here I stopped for the night. Setting off the next morning, it felt shallow, but progress was decent. Perhaps it's just me, but the idea that pedestrians need a sign from the Canal and River Trust to tell them there's a road seems a little absurd. Just after the pub, approaching the corner under the aqueduct, and I tiptoed round with a toot in case anyone was coming. And what do you know, there was another boat which was already under the bridge hole, so I went into reverse and, not knowing if there was space to pass on the corner, backed up to let them through. In the classic canal way though, they also stopped and waited for me to come through. I think there was some waving, but I couldn't really see them through the tree. Also, it seemed more sensible to me that they should pass on the straight bit where I was, rather than me trying to go past them on the bend, because I'd have limited movement being tight up against the towpath. We both waited, and eventually they ended up coming past me and all was well. More frustrating was a delay at the flight of locks just around the corner. Well, slightly annoyingly, some people who've only just gone into the middle lock have already pre-filled and opened the gate for themselves in the bottom lock. So unless I wanted to shut it, empty it, waste water and go up, I've just got to wait here until they've finished in middle lock and then finish coming through bottom lock. I could have been going through that bottom lock. They were just trying to rush themselves through, but it doesn't help me going up. At the top of the locks is the point where the Caldon had split into two. A head would take me back the way I came, a sharp left would take me down the Leek branch of the canal, the one that goes over the aqueduct. Canals are often very quiet until you start a manoeuvre, at which point another boat will show up. It happens without fail. No worries though, I hung back and then attempted the turn. Weirdly, the way was blocked by a drowned triffid, which I had to just push past. First impression of the Leek branch is lovely. Green fields, sheep, and on the left some rather nice moorings. If you want a quiet, permanent mooring, they don't come much more rural than this. Here's the 90-degree left towards the aqueduct. You might think that moored boat ahead is in the way, but there is actually a lot more space than you imagine, and it's fine, though I expect it does get the odd bash every now and then. You've got loads of room to line up for the bridge though. I really should have used the horn again, as I couldn't see at all if anything was coming the other way, but I just crossed fingers and hoped an oncoming boat would use their horn. But there was nothing. Below me there is the canal arm I just came up from. If you'd like to see an aerial shot of it, watch the previous vlog. One thing that doesn't change on the Leek arm is the plethora of narrow bits. Not a lock paddle, but that's a sluice, I think, to let excess water out of the canal. Tiny boats are awesome. And massive garden moorings are pretty awesome too. Down off to the right is where the Froghall canal branch goes, the one I just came off. Now something to give a heart attack to punctuation Nazis everywhere. Please let the owner's surname be Day, otherwise that apostrophe needs some Tipp-Ex. After a couple of miles in a canopy of trees, you emerge to this wide clearing where the Leek tunnel sits off to the right. I noticed, just before I went in, the sign says a maximum beam of 6 feet 8 inches, but every standard narrowboat is 6 feet 10 inches. This was slightly unnerving, since it means technically I shouldn't have fit, but I know loads of boats go through here, so I pressed on anyway. Being so narrow, this is what you very definitely call a one-way only tunnel. You just have to line up and look through first to see if anything's coming. It's short enough that the other end is clearly visible. Well, it would appear the sign is wrong. Having done the Leek tunnel, there's now about half a mile to the end of the canal where I will have to turn round. And the end is just through this bridge, with a winding hole and a fair bit of mooring. There's also a supermarket within a 10-minute walk, which was handy. I decided to turn first this time and reverse onto the towpath. If you're wondering how I go sideways, it's because I've stepped off the boat and am pulling it in with the centre line. Another good day's cruising done. That's it for now.